Morning. Coffee in one of my favorite mugs. Fantastic. Doing an Ethiopian Guji today, natural process or wash process Guji. We're doing this month. It's fantastic. A lot of fun. Timing. My favorite way to make this, AeroPress with, AeroPress. See, I haven't had my coffee yet. It's really bad. V60, 22 grams of coffee, and I ground it on my particular grinder, my Barazza Virtuoso. I had it set at about 12 or 13 on the grinder. And it should take just shy of 2 minutes here to brew. So that's mine and 350 grams of water. So 22 grams of coffee, 350 grams of water, grounded about number 12, Ethiopian Guji. Freaking amazing. Yeah. Just about down to the end there. Give me another second. And once I have my coffee, I can talk. All right. In one of my favorite mugs. Shout out to Monty Python. Still a little hot, but definitely good. So it's Saturday morning. It's 8 o'clock. It's time to enjoy some coffee and kind of get the weekend started. It's a big weekend for us. I got a graduation to go. My first daughter's college graduation, so that's going to be fun. And we got some cool stuff going on here at the shop. So I want to do a pretty regular Saturday morning coffee thing. It's going to be a little tougher when we get into the summer, but we'll try and keep it as consistent as we possibly can. We might end up doing a couple of YouTube live events from farmers markets and various remote locations because I won't always be here. We'll bring a couple of people in so you don't have to sit here and stare at me all the time because that can be less than entertaining. And what we'll do is we'll talk about coffee. We'll talk about some of the myths about coffee and how some of the stuff people say, it's not exactly true. Talk about what's happening in specialty coffee world, and we're going to focus particularly on specialty coffee in the western suburbs of Chicago, at least for the beginning, because that's where we are. And believe it or not, there's a lot of good stuff happening out here. So let's talk about us, FreshGround first. We've got this Ethiopian Guji that's absolutely fantastic in this month, so enjoy that. We're doing new bags, so if you haven't been in to see that, kind of redid all the bags and everything. The nice part is if you order these online, shipping is a whole lot less. And you can also sign up for a subscription so that you can save even more money. So there's our little sponsors now. There we go. The other exciting thing that's happening right now. Bottles, baby. Black ice brew. This is ready to drink. So we're going to pop that in. Those are all over the place. You'll see them at various stores in the area very soon. But come on by and try this. If you've had our cold brew coffee in the past, it's fantastic. It is legitimately, I'll say this, it is the gateway drug. So if you're not a coffee drinker and you want to start, cold brew is the way to start. And that's what I would highly recommend. But we've got it now in 12-ounce ready-to-drink bottles. Just pop this baby open, pour it over ice, and you're good to go. So come on in, and we'll get those. So we'll take some questions. You guys can shout out questions to us on any of our social media. On Twitter, we're at FG Roast. Instagram, you can just search for FG Roast as well. And Facebook, just look for FreshGround Roasting. I think it's actually FG Roast there as well. So we try to be really consistent. That's good stuff. Those are all the news and technical stuff about it. Let me address a couple of things. I think there might be a couple of questions out here if I can get to them and find out what we might be doing. One of the things that one of the questions that I get all of the time, people come in here and they say, I really would like I hear that light roast coffees have more caffeine in them than dark roast coffees. And it's not exactly true, because the light roast coffees, here's what happens. The theory is that the darker you roast a coffee, caffeine burns off and it eventually goes away. And that's one of the biggest myths that we have to dispel. So there's our coffee myth number one. Dark roast coffee does not have less caffeine. What happens, caffeine actually burns off at a much higher temperature than pretty much any coffee has ever roasted, including ours. But what does happen is as it gets darker and darker, the bean tends to expand, and there's more space between all the fibers and all the cells in the coffee. And what happens is if you're measuring coffee and you measure by scoop, which typically most people at home do, they don't use a scale or something like that. They measure by scoop, by volume, because there's more space and the beans are bigger. There's actually less soluble material in the coffee, so you get less caffeine. You actually have less coffee grounds when you're measuring by volume than when you measure by weight. So what really makes a difference is the type of coffee that you buy. There's two strains of coffee. There's Arabica, which is really good, high-quality coffee. That's all we roast. And there's another coffee called Robusta that's a little cheaper coffee, not quite as high quality, but what happens is the beans that are in there, they have a really high caffeine content, because in the coffee plant, that's a natural defense mechanism for the plant. And Robusta coffees actually have about 3 times the caffeine content that Arabica does, 2 to 3 times the caffeine content. So if you're really looking for a caffeine kick, go and dig up one of the really cheap coffees off the shelf, because that's generally mostly Robusta coffee. So let's see. I've got a couple of questions. What's going on here? Let's see what we got going on. Mr. G, what regular expression syntax do I need to include in my form to order Kopi Luwak coffee with essence of Lagavulin single malt? Yeah, the single malt stuff. Don't do coffee and single malt scotch. Keep them separate. The Lagavulin is fantastic all by itself, neat. And we've actually got a nice little shop here in downtown Geneva. You need to come back here and visit us, and we'll go check it out together. All right? Yeah. There's my top chat message. So a couple other things. We're talking coffee. Now I've had my Ethiopian Guji with a little bit of time, chill. You know, it's there's a little bit of body there. It's fantastic. It's not an overwhelming, like, fruit bomb. Sometimes you get these natural processed Ethiopian coffees, and it's just so acidic and fruity. This one, it's a washed processed coffee, so it's a little bit milder on the acidity. It's not quite the fruit bomb that a lot of them are, and then it's got a little more body, so it's kind of a nice medium, nice middle of the road type thing. So this is very enjoyable, and I think as it cools down even a little bit more, you're going to start to taste the brighter notes come out of that a little bit. I used to drink my coffee really hot. It would be absolutely scalding hot, and tends to burn things a little bit. But I've learned that I really need to calm down and let things cool a little bit. That's what we got. So as it cools, a whole bunch of new flavor profiles come out. can even drink it nowadays almost at room temperature. So that's where we are. We're talking coffee. Also want to ask you guys to hit us up if you know of any new, get some reviews of some coffee shops in the area. Believe it or not, there's a lot of specialty coffee happening outside the Chicago area, so we're hoping to do a couple of reviews, talk to a couple of new shops that are coming up, and make sure that those of us in at least the western suburbs of Chicago here have a good idea of what's going on. So here's to some great coffee. Have a great week. Good stuff.